Welcome everyone to the Bran'sTech podcast. We're so glad to have you here today. This podcast episode is in both audio and video form. The audio form is found anywhere you can find podcasts, but to check out the video, go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Tansson Talks. This episode will begin in just one moment after these messages, so please stay tuned. Hello everyone, this is Brandon K. Hedgepeth, and I want to welcome each and every one of you all to today's episode of the Bran'sTech podcast station. I'm really glad to have all of you all here for this interview. If you all don't know me, I am a lifelong learner, communicator, and your friend, and I can't wait to get started for today. And so today, let me go ahead and introduce my guest for today. So my guest is a sophomore college student. She is studying civil and environmental engineering, and she has a lot of amazing interests that I'm sure, is excited to share with you all here today. Please welcome my guest for today, Alanna DaRin. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, thank you so much for inviting me on the podcast. It's my first time being on any podcast, so this is really cool. So thank you so much.
Oh yeah, of course. And that just makes me all the more excited to mention that if I did my math correctly, this is actually now my 100th interview. So, with the first one being in January 2020 and now being a little bit past halfway 2022. Like I said, I'm just so excited to be speaking with you today. I know this is going to be a good one.
Thank you. Yeah, this is awesome.
Oh, yeah, of course. And so I did want to go ahead and start off by asking, how are you doing this afternoon?
It's great. It is warm out here in Troy, New York, but staying cool with air conditioning and a fan in my room.
Well, I'm glad to hear it's all going well. And so before we get started, I did want to allow for you to take a moment to introduce yourself to those watching or listening here online.
Yeah, sure. So as Brandon said, I am a rising sophomore at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, which is in Troy, New York. And I'm majoring in civil and environmental engineering. Yeah.
Well, awesome. Well, I'm really excited, once again, like I said before, to have you here. And I really can't wait to get in with this.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I guess I'll start off by saying, so what really got you interested in wanting to pursue engineering and then go all the way to New York from where you're from for your studies?
Yeah, so I'm not originally from New York. I'm from Virginia. And I think what got me into engineering was the first ever engineering class I took, which was in high school. It was just called Engineering 1. And I absolutely loved it. You got to design and draw all these little things, these mechanisms. And one of my favorite things about that class was learning how to do CAD, or CAD, which stands for Computer Assisted Drawing. So if you're familiar with 3D modeling, you have softwares like AutoCAD, Fusion 360, Autodesk Inventor, stuff like that. So that was what really got me into engineering.
Wow, that's interesting. And so since you mentioned that, of course, some of this has to do with drawing as well, and I know that's actually one of your interests as well.
Yeah, so ever since I was little, I've loved to draw. I can't even remember the first time I got into drawing. It's actually funny. My dad over the summer told me a funny story about when I was little. That I would express how I was feeling through drawing, and apparently one time he told me no for some stupid toddler want that I wanted, and I was upset about it. So what I did, I drew an angry face and I like showed him the piece of paper. So I've been expressing my feelings through art ever since I was very small.
Well, that is actually quite humorous, and
Yeah.
that's definitely to show that you are intertwined with art. That you express your emotions through art, even at a very young age.
Yeah. I nowadays I don't really draw like my emotions or anything. I just sketch like fan art for TV shows or anime that I watch, or actually more recently I started sketching a comic idea I had. So I already have a few like episodes or chapters, I guess, sketched out, but I haven't finalized them or done the line art for them yet. Um, so yeah, I'm finally getting back into an art project, so that's nice. I had a really bad art block earlier this summer, so it's nice to finally get back into doing something that I love.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you were able to sort of start getting back into it as we're getting, yeah, closer to falling towards the end of the year 2022, and it's scary how quickly that's coming.
Oh yeah, no, I'm already scared because school starts in like 2 weeks, and I'm already on campus because I'm here for RA training. So I'm already living the dream, baby. I'm already on campus, and it's very nerve wracking because I am scared. Classes are stressful.
Well, I hope that they're not going to be too bad this year going into your sophomore year. And so, yeah, now that you are a sophomore, definitely by the time that this releases for sure. But I guess what are some of your expectations going into this year? And actually, let me backtrack and first say, how was last year with your first year of college?
Yeah, sure. So my first year of college was, oh god, I don't even know where to be. I don't even know where to begin. Um, it was really really fun. I guess first off, I met so many new people and made so many new friends, and I got to learn all these really cool things in the classes um, that I chose, and um, I don't. It was just a lot of exploring new things, and I was really really happy that I got to do that. Um, on the other side, there's classes, and classes are a nightmare. Anyone who's majoring in any discipline of engineering knows that you have some really really difficult classes. Um, you have I had a intro to engineering analysis. I don't know if other schools have it under the same name, but that class is a nightmare. It is so hard. It was the first class where I've ever failed an exam. I think on the first exam I got like a 56. Um, it was bad. But you know, you work through it and you begin to love your classes even though they're challenging.
Wow. Definitely, like I said, actually, I want to first touch on that what exam. So after, like, not to necessarily focus on the failure necessarily, but I definitely know that, yeah, I mean, through at least for me anyway, and from a lot of people who I've had on the podcast, is that, yeah, I mean, through failure, you're able to sort of see like your future success a little bit and sort of learn from it, and so for you, how did you, I guess, I mean, look at that and I guess go from there in terms of trying to figure out that, yeah, that class or going forward for the semester?
Yeah, sure. So that was kind of so in high school. I've always done really well on exams and stuff. No, I'm sorry, that sounds like I'm bragging. But like when you're in high school, you study hard, and you know you get your exam back, and you're like, great, I studied so hard for this, and my exam is, you know, it came back great. I've had classes where I've gotten not so great exam scores, but then my homework grade lifts it up. Um, But this was like my first major defeat. um, uh, and so I guess after that, like I was like really bummed out. Like I was kind of feeling the burn, you know. Uh, so I was like, okay, this is what everyone has warned me about, that if you don't have good study habits in high school, then it's gonna like really come back to bite you in college. So I was like, crap, I gotta learn how to study now. um, and it's not like I didn't study before. It's just like I didn't learn how to like really study. um, and so after that, I went to my there. We have this club on campus called, well, it's a national fraternity, but it goes under a club. It's called Alpha Phi Omega. And what they do is that they store donated exams from like as many classes as we can. And so what students can do is that they can go to the office and they can take pictures of the past exams and they can use that in their studying. And so doing that was really, really helpful. And so, yeah, after studying my butt off, I got a better exam, better grade on my exam. Um, and so, yeah, I guess that's kind of like my little spiel on overcoming challenges is just work hard and things will improve.
Well, I'm glad to hear that at least you were able to, to take that sort of low point and being able to, use it to your advantage to sort of help you create study skills. And I know definitely college studying is definitely a lot different than, yeah, than public school studying. It definitely it definitely requires a lot more of paying attention and being able to not just like memorize stuff, but also like apply the skills that you learned. And so I'm glad that you were able to, yeah, to figure that out early on as opposed to later, like in your senior year or anything.
Yeah, honestly, I that was like a real like rude awakening. That and math. I've never been like math has always been like my weakest subject. So doing and what I noticed is, unlike a lot of, apologies for the traffic, unlike a lot of other students in my class, I didn't take AP Calc in high school. I remember one day in class, the teacher was covering something, and she was like, "All right, students, just checking to make sure that you guys have already seen this, so that we can move on. Um, how many of you have taken AP Calc and have seen this, whatever, on the board?" And everyone raises their hands except for me and this other girl sitting in the front, and I'm like, "Oh my god, I'm screwed. This is gonna be horrible." And it was. But you know, you push through it and you study, and I've always had friends who can help me there. I have friends who are a lot smarter than I am, which I'm very, very thankful for.
Wow, and I guess not to tell myself too much, but I took very little. I did take. I was at some point in time enrolled in a version of AP Calculus. It didn't stay in there all too long. Like, math is not my subject, and so I definitely felt that. But luckily, I don't. Luckily for my discipline of communication, I had to deal more with statistics than calculus, which definitely was the saving grace for me because I very much prefer statistics to calculus. But I'm glad at least that you were able to somewhat, yeah, work on that and overcome it, even if it was a challenging class.
Oh yeah, I'm looking forward to all of those classes coming back again. Um, so this semester I have to take. I don't even remember. You mind if I pull up my schedule here?
All good.
All right, let me pull this up. These classes, they sound like nightmares, and I'm very scared. But I have to take them because it's my major. Um, so I have like physics two. That's a given. Did not do. I got like a B or something in physics one, so gonna try to improve that next semester. But it's a work in progress. Physics is hard. Also have if my schedule could load, please. Uh, Hydrology. That's a really interesting sounding course. Essentially, because I'm like a civil engineer, or I'm studying to be a civil engineer, I have to deal with water and pipes and stuff. So that's kind of that's what that class is going to teach me about. It's called fluid mechanics for civil and environmental engineers. I also have strengths of materials, which is something like mechies have to take. Um, Sounds fun too. And then DiffEq, or Intro to Differential Equations. So great. Looking forward to not sleeping. I'm very bad at time management. It's another one of those like habits that you should learn in high school, but I didn't. I've never been good at time management, but somehow I always make it through. So you know, it is what it is.
Yeah, time management is one of those things where, okay, so at the very beginning of 2022, probably at 2021 and 2020 as well, I did this whole thing where I was trying to focus on my well being, and I spoke about all of the stuff I was going to do, like time management and personal, do prioritizing my personal well being. And I don't quite actually know how successful I was in any of that, but I guess it sounded nice for the time that I was talking about it, telling people to prioritize it. So now I'm actually like working to actually do this stuff. So maybe my goals are like slightly delayed by give or take about a couple weeks to a few years, but I'm working towards it. And so I'm glad that you're at least like acknowledge that it's something that you're working to hopefully, I guess, work on at some point in time, hopefully before your the end of your sophomore year. And so actually something I want, well, first let me comment and say that from hearing from other people I know who, both on the podcast and offline, that are engineering students, I definitely understood a lot of the struggles that you mentioned for year one, because I've heard that from so many people I've spoken with. But I guess a question I had for you is going back a little bit to last year, was how was it for you? Yeah, I mean, settling into college, several states away from where you live and are familiar with.
Oh yeah. So it's like a 6-7 hour drive from Virginia to where I am in New York, and it's a long drive. So I usually take the train. This time I actually took a plane, because it was cheaper than the train for some reason. Let's go transportation. Uh, but yeah, it's really weird because you're in an entirely different environment, right? If you live in like North Virginia or like the DC area, you know how like disgustingly humid it gets, especially in the summer and the spring. It's horrible. It's a nightmare. But up here, it's pretty dry almost all year, and especially in winter. So one is the climate, but two is like being so far away from home. I don't know anyone here, or I didn't know anyone here um, when I moved in. Uh, no one from my high school got in except for me, so I was like a fresh new start, um, but I'm kind of used to that. I my dad's a foreign service officer, so when I was a kid, I would move all around the world, and that kind of got me used to living somewhere for 4 years and then moving somewhere else. Entirely new start, entirely new friends, entirely new country. You know, so learning like an entirely different language or being accustomed to new circumstances, it comes naturally to me now. Adaptability is just kind of something you got to learn as the kid to a foreign service officer, you know. And even though that's kind of like, it's kind of sad that you got to leave your friends every 4 years. Um, it's really cool being able to move to new places, um, and experience entirely different ways of living and entirely different cultures. So to answer your question, yeah, the move was hard, but I love it. I love trying new things.
Well, I'm glad that that you were already somewhat adjusted to, to going into a new environment, adjusting to it and adapting there. And luckily this time you didn't have to learn a whole new language to, to go from Virginia to New York.
Oh yeah, I'm so glad, man. I My last language I learned was like Spanish in freshman year of high school. I did 3 years of that. I, I'm I can barely remember any of the languages I used to speak. I used to be fluent, not fluent, but I used to be able to like hold a conversation in Japanese, and now I can like maybe pick up a couple words, and it's the same for Spanish. Like I just, because I don't practice them anymore, they kind of they disappear um, from my mind. So yeah.
Well, that's unfortunate that you don't still have those skills, but hopefully, but at least from you having previously known it, at least you'd probably be able to pick up a little bit quicker than some other people who have, no idea about the languages.
Yeah, no, I've actually, I don't know why that came out so weirdly. um, I've actually considered relearning Japanese just because it's just such a fun language, and it's just so fun to speak. I also really want to visit Japan again. Um, Maybe not live there, but as like a vacation or something. I don't know how much you know about Japan, but it's it's just amazing. I love it. There's so many places to visit. If you're into like visiting like religious places or like shrines or temples or anything, there's places like Kyoto. Or if you want to explore, I don't know, I'm trying to think. One of Japan's really popular tourist destinations is Nara, which is really famous for its deer, which kind of just walk around the streets, and you can like cross the road and there's just a deer there. You can actually buy little crackers to feed them too, so they're very friendly towards people. Um, and they're also like, they have this really interesting association with like the Buddhist temples there because they're just always around them. Um, just Japan's magical.
Well, I'm glad you were able to, to experience the magic of it when you were there. And so for Virginia, how long were you in Virginia prior to heading up to New York for college?
I had lived there for 4 years, so high school, freshman to senior year. I had actually moved there directly from Japan. Um, so our tour there was over. I say tour, but like in quotation marks, that's what they call your stationing there. And so it was over. I moved back to America, and I start high school in America, which was very scary because I had been in this like international school with I hope you didn't hear the motorcycle. I'm sorry. Uh, I had been in this international school with like mostly kids that had grown up in Japan, um, and like you would know if there was an American there because like they just had this aura of like Americanness around them. Like you could just kind of tell, especially if they were new. And while like I'm American, it was like different. They embodied like a different uh, kind of like foreignness in Japan because they were new and hadn't become accustomed to the culture yet. While I had been there maybe a year or two longer, and was already used to it. Um, but yeah, going. going back to America for high school was very daunting. I was so scared because, like, when you're in middle school and you go into high school, you already have like your friend group. If they follow you into college, I'm sorry, not college. If they follow you into high school, um, so I was worried that like I wouldn't fit in and I wouldn't have like my group of friends that I've always had. So yeah, that was it.
Wow, that's actually really interesting. I mean, to hear that, and with you going, up there practically after being there for 4 years. I mean, that sort of, I mean, works out because that's what you're sort of used to, anyways. Yeah, to be in a different spot every, 4 years, give or take, and so, yeah, that's actually like, I mean, really interesting. And but during your high school time, when you knew that you wanted to do engineering of some form, I know that you also did some, like, what are some of the stuff that you did towards the later part of high school to, I guess, prepare you for college?
Man, it sounds like you're shilling for Vess. Are they sponsored? I mean, I don't blame it. It's a good course. So yeah, in my senior year of high school, I had heard about this program called VESS, so Virginia Earth System Science Scholars, which I'm sure you've talked about previously on your podcast. Um, I know some interns that I worked with are have also been featured on this podcast. If you're watching, hi Antonio. um, so yeah, it's this course where you take it over the school year. You write research papers, and then your master teacher, who's been reading your papers and assessing um, your research capabilities, decides on whether you are worthy to join the summer academy. Um, and in my senior year of high school, I decided to do that. So I I wrote my research papers. I learned so much through that course. I know so much about bees and hurricanes and all this like interesting climate related stuff. I love that course. It was awesome. Um, but yeah, after that, I got accepted into the summer academy, and it was all virtual, which was so disappointing because if it wasn't virtual, I would have gotten to visit NASA Langley, which is like every nerdy kid's dream, right? To go to NASA. Um, so I was really bummed out. It was all virtual, but I did meet some really cool people, and I learned a lot of really cool things. Um, I don't know what else to talk about, Bess. My team I got chosen for was the lithosphere team, which was not my first choice. My first choice was, I believe, the biosphere, and then like the hydrosphere, because there's so much cool stuff about that biosphere. You could like observe the reactions of plants and how they've adapted to climate change, or like how they signal changes in the climate. And the hydrosphere is the same. It's really cool. Um, the hydrosphere refers to all of the Earth's like water, whether it be underground or in the ocean or in rivers, stuff like that. Um, and so I was really hyped to join the hydrosphere and do something about how work on a NASA mission that observed temperature changes in the ocean and how that leads to hurricane formation and stronger hurricanes. And then I got put into the group where you look at dirt. Um, I was the dirt group. I was the leader of the dirt group, and that was bumming me out. But I actually got to do a really cool project. I forgot. I think we called it Fields, or like the Field Mission, which is an actual NASA mission. But we decided to steal the name anyways. And the acronym stood for like fracking induced effects on, I think, deformation and subsidence, which, if you don't know, fracking or hydraulic fracking is when you, in order to get oil from the ground, you insert water or chemicals into the area that you want to expel the oil from, and that increase in pressure allows the oil to escape, right? But that increase in pressure in the ground also causes uh, the rock to begin to cave in because a change in pressure changes the formation. And that can even lead to things like earthquakes, which affect local communities. So, the point of our mission that we designed for this best course was to explore that, explore how local communities and the lithosphere or the ground is affected by hydraulic fracturing practices. Um, and so that was something really cool. It sounds really like on the surface level, I think it sounds a little boring. Like, wow, we look at fracking, woo! But it's when you look into the nitty gritty of it and like how it affects the economy and how it affects the environment, it's incredibly complex and incredibly interesting. Um, and so, to continue the best story, I returned this year as a intern or kind of like a teacher's assistant, um, working with the lithosphere again, but this time as kind of their mentor, and it was so cool. I'm so proud of my kids. I don't know. I don't think they'd be watching this. Yeah, I see the little claps. I appreciate that. I think we're always proud of the things our students do, but this year the lithosphere team decided to look at the magnetosphere, which, if you don't know, um, it's like the magnetic field around Earth generated by movement in the Earth's core because there's like molten metal and magma, and that helps generate an electric field around Earth, right? So what my kids were doing was exploring anomalies in this magnetic field and how that could potentially affect satellites and even um, the electricity here on Earth, because solar radiation, we're protected on Earth from solar radiation by these magnetic fields. Um, and if they were to disappear, we would probably die of radiation. But so these fields are essential to life on Earth. Um, and by exploring them, these students made a mission that uh, deals with the impacts of solar radiation on every aspect of our life. I mean, it doesn't just affect your electronics, it could potentially affect your agriculture and the food you grow. Um, because these magnetic fields also affect things like bees and their ability to track their way back to their colonies. And if they aren't able to do that, well, they die. And that further contributes to what is known as colony collapse disorder. And I'm starting to ramble, but I'm just, you know, for a team that's focused on dirt, we do a lot of really cool stuff.
That it didn't occur to me to put it in that way until you mentioned it, and then that's all I can think about when I think of the lithosphere now. Is your is the team about dirt? That's what I can.
My kids, I we fully embraced the dirt aspect. Like, obviously the lithosphere doesn't cover just the dirt; it covers all of the inside of Earth, um, which is why we focused on the core. Um, but my kids embraced the dirt aspect of this team, um, and we even had a little chant. I guess I wouldn't call it little because we were quite loud. My team would decide that in order to like boost morale, and we did this before our final presentation, we would just sit there in our room at NASA headquarters in this like really professional looking office space. We would just be chanting rocks, 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 and we would be pounding the desk. And I love that. I love that that's just the nature of this team, that we're just such a weird, unique group, you know?
Well, I'm so glad that you enjoyed it, and it sounds like you really very much liked working with your with your scholars and I presume your fellow intern as well, and so yeah, I said, this sounds so fun that you were able to do that. And then, of course, yeah, obviously, I know quite a bit of this stuff since I was a fellow intern as well for another group. But I mean, overall, like I'm just so glad that you were able to enjoy this experience and return and finally be able to be in person.
Yes. Oh my God. I applied to be an art be best intern. I forgot when the things go out. I think January. And this whole time, from January up until we got the email that we were going to be in person, I was like praying to every known deity that I would finally be able to go to NASA. Because I swear to God, if I spend another year virtual, I'm going to lose my mind. But finally, I got to visit NASA. And I took so many pictures of like all these rockets and planes. We even got to go inside a NASA hangar, and we got to see like these planes that they had repurposed from the U.S. military. They had retired these planes, but now they attached data taking instruments onto these planes, and when they fly them, they're measuring things that are relevant to like your weather and stuff like that. And it was so cool. I was so excited. Um, it was incredible. I'm so happy that we got to be in person this year.
I'm so glad that you were able to get that experience, especially at not just any center, but NASA Langley. Especially at not just any center, but NASA Langley, which, yeah, for those people who are listening and don't really know the significance of that, is NASA Langley is one of the very first NASA centers, enough where it outdates NASA by 41 years. Which I may be like a little bit of a history geek, but I mean that to me that is just so exciting to be there. Was that your first time at NASA, or had you been there before?
Yeah, no, that was my first time at NASA. I think the closest I've ever been was like the Air and Space Museum in Washington D.C., which that was the closest I've ever been to NASA. But this was so cool, you know. And to elaborate on what you said, so that wasn't like that site predates NASA because NASA didn't always exist. I mean, it used to be called NACA, NACA, I believe. Although I can't remember what the C was for. Hold on, I can pull it up. Yeah, National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics. Like, you know, I love the history of things too, so I just think that's so neat.
Yeah, definitely. And fun fact, I mean, again, I love researching this stuff, and I'm definitely a research enthusiast. Is that back then they actually just pronounced it as NACA. They didn't even think of doing the.
They didn't call it NACA?
Yeah, you would think that they would call it that, but they just called it the NACA.
I feel like I've been living a lie. Like, NACA, it just sounds so much better than NACA, I guess.
Fully agree. And when I was at a NASA facility, I was looking at the grates and stuff for like the electricity or sewer, whatever it was, and I actually found one that actually said NACA on it.
Are you serious?
Yeah, it was really cool, and I took so many pictures of it. I'm sure that's probably the only thing I can take a
With the
picture of there
the
since.
NACA thing, I guess.
But
Yeah.
I mean,
I took
yeah.
so many selfies. I feel so embarrassed. Because, like, you'd be on tour and, like, you just finished hearing this, like, amazing presentation from this, like, scientist who's talking about his work and, like, what he's passionate about. And then, like, all I do for the next, like, 10 minutes is take selfies in front of his work. And then, like, I help the kids take pictures and, like, group photos. It's wholesome. It's fun. So I'm glad you found that NACA thing. That's awesome.
Yeah, definitely. And I know that's not your only encounter with NASA either this summer.
Oh yeah. So I didn't only intern for VES. I also interned for something called the Space Coast Scholars Program, which functions pretty much the same way, but it's for sophomores in high school instead of juniors and seniors. So a little younger. and instead of being at NASA Langley, we're up at Wallops Flight Facility, which, if you ever want to watch a rocket go into the atmosphere, that is the place to watch the launch. It is so cool. Sadly, I haven't been able to see any in person. I think I missed their most recent launch by like one day. Me and my family were staying up there after the program for I think Chincoteague Island, which is famous for like its horses and its pretty beach. It's really cool. But yeah, I was up there for Wallops Space Coast Scholars Program, and it was really cool. Similarly to this, you get into these like separate groups, and you each work on a specific NASA mission with your own goal in mind. This time, I was on the scientific balloons team, which was really cool and exciting. But I had never done the program before, not even as a student, so I was very, very nervous. But I learned about scientific balloons and the kinds of missions that scientific balloons encompass, and it was so cool. My kids came up with they for some reason, I don't know what it is, but for some reason both my teams this summer decided to do something related to the magnetosphere and radiation, which is a really weird coincidence. Like, what's the Doofenshmirtz quote where it's like, if I had a nickel for every time this happened, I would have two nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice. And so these kids planned a NASA mission where they had like a scientific balloon. So it's like a big white weather balloon looking thing, with like a little box attached at the bottom. That's like its payload. And within this box, they planned on having two samples of, I hope I'm saying this right, Lactobacillus acidophilus, which is it's a bacteria commonly found in your yogurt. Uh, and so what they did was they had a control group and the independent variable group. And in this case, their independent variable was magnets. So they were studying the effect of magnets on So I guess I should preface this. Solar radiation and like space radiation damages you and damages astronauts, right? So when they're up in the ISS, they can't stay there forever. I mean, if they had the supplies and stuff, you would think that they could stay there forever, right? But no, they actually have to come back down because of the radiation that they get from space. They even have like a little radiation budget they have that lets them know when they need to come down. And so my kids were exploring the possibility of using magnets to prevent radiation from affecting these astronauts. But this time they were experimenting on this bacteria and seeing if the magnets would actually be able to protect this bacteria from the radiation, and they would be able to measure the effects by the growth rate. So this balloon would send the bacteria up into the atmosphere, and after circling the Arctic for 7 days, would come back down, and they would be able to analyze results. So that's what I did up at Wallops Flight Facility.
That is pretty cool, and I mean, it's just that is a very interesting coincidence that both your teams for different programs in different parts of the state, bless you, did a
Thank you.
yeah, of course, but did
Sorry, my room is dusty. I just moved in and it was like layers of dust. It was disgusting.
wow. Well, hopefully, before classes start and everything back up for you, that you're able to I mean that the dust slowly starts to come off, but not in the. Yep, got that Lysol. Awesome. Yeah, I'm glad that that both your teams were able to be so synchronized, despite the fact that they're very different programs and in different parts of the state, and I'm glad that you were able to make that Phineas and Ferb quote. I'm very sure that the creators, I'm sure, would love that we were able to use that in a casual conversation. But
I know, right? That show was so good, and I feel like honestly that I think that show inspired a lot of engineers because like just the insane stuff they would do on that show and like the crazy things they would build. I feel like that not only inspired me, but like a lot of other young kids to get into like building stuff. Um, made being a nerd cool.
Yeah, well, yeah, that is honestly really true. And I mean, for someone who, I mean, just has an endless amount of curiosity like myself, I mean, yeah, I've definitely ranked that up there. Yeah, that's something I hadn't even thought about before, but yeah, I've definitely ranked that up there in terms of shows that really get you thinking.
Oh yeah, it's been a long time since I've watched like children's TV shows, but like I think we sometimes we need to like sit back and think about how much they've affected us. Um, I think the other day, I don't know, have you watched the show Gravity Falls?
I haven't necessarily seen it. I've seen like maybe like a clip here and there, but I haven't seen the show.
Yeah, shows like that have like molded this generation's childhood. um, and I think a lot of them like are are the reason why we're interested in the stuff we're interested in now. Um, and like shows like Phineas and Ferb and Gravity Falls that kids and adults alike enjoy, I feel like really mold our the, this generation's love for adventure and problem solving and mystery and stuff like that. You know, I was just thinking about that the other day because I was watching a clip from it that just appeared in my YouTube recommended. Um, the weirdest stuff appears in that. I have no idea why it decided to recommend it to me that day, but you know, it's fate.
Yeah, that is quite true. YouTube recommended is definitely always very interesting. And even though we're wrapping up this conversation, I did definitely want to I just quickly ask, since you mentioned that yeah, before we started that you were that you had an interest in crocheting too. Like, is that related to all of the other stuff that you like that you're really interested in, or is that like a completely different like interest altogether?
Yeah, sure. So crocheting, I think I picked up in my junior year of high school. I had just started knitting again. I had picked that up in fifth grade, and I was like, I still have yarn from that, and I still have knitting needles that I haven't touched in like or not 5 years. Yeah, like 5 years. It'd been a long time. So I was like, you know what, I'll get back into something because like I love to draw, and I love to create. So I want to try this thing. Um, and so that Christmas, I went to Michael's and Joanne's fabric store with my mom, and I bought some yarn and some crochet hooks. Um, and it's really really interesting because I feel like I just happened to coincide with this movement of crocheters because that was the year that COVID happened. And so we all went into quarantine, but I had already gotten my crochet hooks and my yarn, and I was ready to do nothing all quarantine. I was gonna watch TV shows and crochet. Um, and I hadn't really gotten into it because of like anything like you mentioned, like any other reasons or anything related to engineering or all these things that I've been talking about. I just wanted to, and it looked cute, and I wanted to be able to make my own plushies. That's every child's dream is to make their own toys. And so I started making like cute little animals and stuff. But now I'm making uh, like anime character like little like figures and stuff out of crochet, and it's really cool. It's been really fun. Because part of the joy of crocheting is that you can make your own patterns and make whatever you want because there's no really limit except for the physical capabilities of your yarn and your hook and your patience. Because crocheting is it takes a very long time. And while I'm not exactly a very patient person, but something about the simplicity of crocheting just brings a certain sense of serenity to you, you know? I'm sure we all have our hobbies that we find peace in, but that was mine, especially during quarantine.
Well, awesome. Like I said, that's actually really cool, and it was great that you were able to, to do that through the COVID-19 pandemic. That, like I said, that's pretty cool. But I knew I had to ask about that before we ended out because, like I said, you had mentioned that, and it got me intrigued. I had to ask. But yeah, but overall, like I said, this has been such a fun conversation, and yeah. Well, before I say anything else, for anyone who is watching or listening who would like to share, to continue hearing your story, is there anywhere online that people can follow you to continue following along? If not, that's quite all right as well, but at least did want to provide that opportunity for you.
Yeah, of course. So I have an Instagram. It's at, or I don't know if you even have to say at. It's Alanna.DaRin. My name's ALA.DARIN. I have a bunch of posts about my recent stay at Wallops and Langley, and I occasionally post sketches I do and the wacky stuff I crochet. So if you're interested in checking that out, look at my Instagram. And thank you so much for having me on the podcast. This has been really fun. I got to talk about so much stuff that I haven't really had the opportunity to talk about before. So thank you.
Oh, yeah, of course, and thank you for coming on. I just really love this conversation, and like I said, this is just such a great one for, like I said, number 100 for for the combined total of from this podcast, Bran'sTech, as alongside the other one I have, the Bran'sCorner podcast, and actually a sort of fun fact that I'm saying for the first time now actually is that over these next couple months, to end out 2022, is that I'm actually working to merge the two podcasts together for a singular show going into 2023. And so yeah, it's definitely was a interesting decision to come to, but I definitely hope that this is one that will help continue allowing people to continue telling their stories here on my platform. And so I just really can't wait to see what the future has to hold. But Alanna, thank you so much. And before I let you go, though, I did want to allow you to go ahead and close us out with whether it be a closing thought, a favorite quote, or life lesson, whatever the case may be. The floor is all yours.
Okay, I've been thinking about this. So my by the way, thank you for having me on for your 100th episode. This feels like it's such an honor. Thank you. Um, but as for the quote, I want to leave off with there is this Bill Nye quote, which, by the way, I love that man. He's one of the reasons why I just love science. He made it so appealing for kids. I have this quote from him that I used as my senior quote, and I think it's a very good illustration of I guess my attitude towards the world. So I'll just say it right here. It's the more you find out about the world, the more opportunities there are to laugh at it. Which it can sound a little mean spirited, but I like to take it as you continue to explore and learn more about the world, the more joy you can find in it, and the more happiness you can find from learning new things. And I really try to encompass that attitude and that outlook on life in everything that I do. So that is my quote that I will leave you off with. Thank you.
Hey, of course, and thank you. Have a wonderful day, everyone. I really hope that you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see y'all next time. I really hope that you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see y'all next time. Take care. Bran'sTech has been created and produced by Brandon K. Hedgepeth of Tansson, LLC.